It is such a gift to be with you always and every day. My name is Tuesday May Thomas, and this is my weekly live stream for the Trinity. I'm so excited to bring you today's show. I'm going to have Diane Galindo on here in a moment. Here she is. Let's go ahead and bring her on in. What I will share is that 4D Trinity is a show that teaches us, that shares these ideas and these concepts, these teachings about bridging heaven on earth. There she is. Hi, Diane.
Hello, good to see you again.
So good to see you. So good to see you. Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
I'm going to turn my volume up. And I was just sharing that the premise of this weekly live stream is this idea of bridging heaven on earth, this idea of aligning the body, the mind, and the emotional aspects of ourselves with spirit, with that divine blueprint, so that we can come home to that aspect, to that truth of ourselves that really, I feel, always is. And I feel so grateful because over these past couple weeks and this last month, I've had a few guests on, and you are one of them, and I'm just so grateful to know you here on this platform. You know, I feel like I've been following you for at least a year, probably even closer to 2, and we've just riffed off of each other's posts and sort of gotten to know each other, and I'm very grateful last month or earlier this month you had me on as a guest, and I feel like this is just so cool because we get to hang out together.
Oh, right? I thought, wow, this is fun. Because we kind of jive. I feel it, you know. It's cool. I really hope so.
It is. It's really cool. And I feel that you have, you know, in so many ways, just your presence, you have definitely amassed a level of self-mastery. And I consider self-mastery is just the ability to consciously perceive love, you know, over and over and over again. And I really feel the love that you channel. And so I just wanted to share that with you and with everyone who's joining us before we sort of dig in. So thank you again.
Receive that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And so for anyone just hopping on, this is a very exciting show to take place today because I love hanging out with other Reiki members of the family and empaths, intuitives, and this is what you are. You're an intuitive, you're an empath, you're a medium, you have psychic abilities, and you're a holy fire Reiki master. And you have a beautiful, and we'll revisit this at the end as well, but you have a beautiful site via your Instagram that just really breaks everything down, and it's laid out really gorgeous, I gotta say. And you share a little bit about your story, but today I think it would be so interesting to go a little deeper and to quest a little deeper. And I know as you share about your information that on that site that you speak about having a sense of your extrasensory abilities as a child. So when did it all begin?
You know, that's interesting question, I think, for a lot of us, because I think a lot of us have had experiences since we were very, very small. And we had no idea what they were, right? Kind of, some were frightening, some were not. Mine actually kept me safe because I grew up in an abusive household, and I saw, when I would try to leave my room, there was this big green man, I call him, and he would stand in front in the hallway and not let me go down the stairs. Now, was he real? No. But to me, he was like this. He was enormous because you're this big. And this enormous man standing there, and he's green. And are you going to go past this man when you're little? I don't think so. So you're going to go back and you're going to go under the covers and go, oh my goodness, there's a green man there. Why is he there? Looking back now, hi Rich. Looking back now, I can say he probably saved my life a few times. I can really honestly say that. Anyway, fast forward to when you're a teenager, you become a little bit introverted. Hi, Stina. You become a little bit introverted. You become a little bit different, right? You feel you're a little shy. Hi, Todd, you're a little not quite like everybody else, right? So I grew up as a dancer, and I know you dance too and stuff, and I felt very comfortable on stage because it was just me and the lights, right? I knew there were people out there. I knew there were others that were watching me, but that didn't really bother me. It was my place to be where I could be alone, I could be myself, and I could have the freedom to dance. And that to me was total freedom. And I loved my dancing years because I could just enjoy me, enjoy being the essence of me, enjoy feeling grounded, enjoy feeling loved, right? And out of the house, I guess, would be. So as you grow and you learn, you don't know what intuition is at first. You don't know what, all these clairs are. You don't have no idea about any of it. But then one day, I believe the universe kind of conspires in your behalf or on your behalf and kind of puts things in your path that makes you look up things, or a book falls off a shelf, or something happens that you say, oh, wait a minute, that's kind of me, that's describing me. So that's where my journey began, but it wasn't until probably my late 40s, early 50s that I actually got to read things and look at things, and it started off literally with automatic writing is when it started. It started to meditate. Yeah. So
okay,
Dr.
I'm sorry. I just want to backtrack a little bit because that is so juicy, and I definitely want to go with the automatic writing. But just to reflect on what you said about performing, being a dancer, and being on stage, and that you felt that it was a place that you could be alone or be with the light, and that the audience or the participants there didn't really distract you. And I feel that because there is such a blessed. My favorite thing in the whole world is really just channeling in co-creation with spirit, with God, with source, with love, and whether it's dancing, writing, anything creative at all. And that is also for me. I feel like no one else is around, yet at the same time, that divine unity is present always. And I think it's very interesting that you were speaking about the green man when you were a child, and how there was some divine, presence there keeping you safe in the midst of what you were dealing with in your surroundings. And just before we go a little further, did you feel, because I know we're both over 30, and so, and back in the day, there wasn't a hashtag empath, but do you feel now that back then did you have a sense of that, growing up in your household, and a sense of you weren't afraid of the green man, but was there a higher sort of a sense of knowing the green man?
There wasn't at that time. All I knew is that green man, if he showed up, I go back to where I came from. That's about as far as it went. The fear was there. Well, what is that green man? And I also had a sister who passed away when she was born. She was older than me. And sometimes I would hear her voice, or I assuming it's her voice, but I would hear somebody call my name. And I knew then if I heard that specific voice, that specific frequency, I was to go to my room. And that voice saved my life a couple times too. Like it was like, boom, I heard the voice, went upstairs, and then something crazy would happen, right? So I always attributed that to the soul of my sister, but I didn't know her because she was before me, and she passed before me. So between the green man and that, I kind of had things going on in my life, and then I could just feel, sometimes I would be so, it's going to be sad for a hot second, but I would feel like I really wanted somebody to tuck me in at night, right? And I wanted, because I would hear kids at school and they would say, oh, my mom came in and read me a story or this or that, and they came in and tucked me in, and nobody did that for me. So one night I was laying there and I was really upset about that. I had some kids talking at school. I said, I wish somebody would tuck me in. And I swear to you, Tuesday, the blankets kind of went like this underneath me. Freaked the hell out. Okay, what's going on here? But the blankets kind of tucked themselves in. I could see them move. I could feel them. And then I heard the voice say goodnight.
Oh.
And okay, like I'm either off of here in La La Land or something is there. And that's when I kind of decided, to listen to the voice, watch for the green man, ask for things that I wanted, like being tucked in at night, things like that. But I didn't really know what they were. I just kind of did them instinctively.
Right.
Or, I guess, kind of from your gut. And that's what got me through, like, being a kid.
Isn't that amazing? And then so cut to you're in, did you say you were around your 30s or 40s when you started automatic writing? And then how did that come about for you?
What happened was is I had a friend who was starting to study Reiki, but we meditated a lot together. And she said, let's try this automatic writing thing. I'm like, okay, I don't care, let's do that. So we did, and I started, you know how you do, you write, and you run out of page, and you don't even know where you are, and you're just writing all this crazy stuff, right? So I wrote it, it stopped, the voice stopped, and then I just had to, like, put it down, go get something to eat, ground myself a little bit, come back, and I read the most beautiful thing for me. And at the end, I remember it said, it signed itself, I am.
Mm.
It said capital I am. So I wrote I, capital with the C-A-P-I-T-A-L. I wrote the word capital, I am. And it said, no, capitalize I am. Okay, so I scribbled that out. Capitalize I am, went to get something to eat, came back, Googled I am. Blew my mind. I was like, oh my goodness, first thing that came up was Metatron and the archangels and, the hierarchy of all that and Enoch in the Bible and all this stuff. And I'm like, holy moly. So that's where kind of like I thought, there's something to this. There's something to being an empath. There's something to hearing these voices. There's something to detecting the vibration of things. But it all started off with that writing. And the beautiful I am was from Metatron, actually, because I write with him a lot now. And do. But at first, it kind of like, it blew my mind. I was like, sometimes you're like, well, who am I and what is this? And kind of you're not quite sure. But then I am told me, why not you? You are you and you're perfect. And that's kind of where I got the gumption to go with all of this was I am.
Isn't that so very powerful? And just for those who might be watching who are unaware of automatic writing, and just so that we are also on the same page, to my awareness, it's just when we make ourselves present for the voice of the divine to channel through, and we're prepared with pencil or pen, or maybe it's the computer or whatnot that you use. And you're on standby, and you will receive downloads. Like, did you hear their audience? Like, you heard the voice. Yeah. And then, it's interesting because I have friends who are having and who have had these experiences when they sit in their meditation and the voice comes and it says, okay, prepare yourself, keep showing up, and next time come with a pen and a paper. And they get freaked out, number one, not because they're not, long-term spiritual meditators or that they're not tapped in, but I think it's that there's a sense of, like, responsibility, and it's like, oh, this is like another job in a way that we get to keep showing up for. And it's also like, how ready are you, how willing are you to show up on that capacity and really surrender? And there's no right or wrong. It's all divinely perfect timing when someone decides to or doesn't decide to show up for that work. But it is quite profound. As you say, you receive the I am. And in the teachings I share, the I am is just fully that frequency that brings us into the now moment where divine and love, just pure love and only love always reside. And so that is a very powerful sort of an anchor that guided you. And it sounds like you got a lot of breadcrumbs for your breadcrumb trail on those first sits or in that first sit. And so you obviously obviously we're not afraid, and you're saying you're still channeling that, you're still automatic writing. And so it's been a while now. And how did that take you deeper into the steps where you realized, and your psychic abilities, your intuitive abilities, and your spiritual path?
Well, what it did for me is the automatic writing, I'll tell you, it gave me peace, because I knew that the green man was real. I knew that the tucking in the bed, your whole life, all these experiences you had, they're real now. I am told me so. The writings told me so. There were other people that writings too, but Metatron mostly writes with me. That propelled me to start reading abilities. And when I Googled clairs, the clairs, there were 5, there was 6 of them. And I'm like, oh wow, there's names for an empath. There's names to hear. There's names to taste. There's names to touch. There's names to smelling. All these things that I've been experiencing, and kind of brushing them aside a little bit, like, you're not really hearing that, or you're not tasting this, or you're not smelling gardenias out of, in your kitchen for no reason at all. When you start looking at these things, you're like, whoa, and it blew my mind. And I've always been that kid, why is this happening? Why is that happening? I was always curious. So I read so many books and Googled so many things, and just started my own journey inside, and started to work with these energies like a muscle to, first was clairsentient, because that's what comes to me naturally. And then the others followed. The only one I don't do is clairgustient. That was a really tough one for me. That's clear tasting.
Yeah.
You do automatic writing too, Todd? That's so cool. It's fun. So I just got very, very curious. And the more curious I got, the more information I got without books, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Downloads and all of a sudden I get a lot of my inspiration in the shower, which is the water part of it I get. But I'll come out of the shower and boom, blah, 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 and you got to have a pen and paper and write this stuff down, or else you will totally forget it. So I remember that, and I never do. So, before or after a shower or on a walk, I come back and really write, just jot words. You don't even have to put sentences, but they mean something. It's something to study later. It's something to do now. It's a different way to look at things. So that's how I I just went for it all. My Kundalini opened. I didn't know what that was. I had no clue what that thing was going on. And it opened spontaneously, so I hadn't even really tried to do that one. And all of a sudden this thing is going up and down, and I'm like, what is going on now? Because I was so high, it was crazy. So I learned about Kundalinis, and then I read about sacred geometry, and just these different things that come into your life, but they're right on time. Right. Which blew my mind, is everything was right on time when I was ready to receive it. And just like you're ready to receive it, you're ready to know it, you're ready to incorporate the energy, you're ready to work with it. And it's not going to happen before you're ready, I believe. It's only in divine timing, and it's only when your vibration is okay and your body is okay to handle that vibration, right? So it won't happen before then, and it can't be forced. That's another thing that I noticed, is you can't, I want to see auras so bad that it's like, I've always wanted to see an aura. I've seen maybe little bits of auras. I've seen them on my dog. I've seen them on me a little bit. But I mean, people can see auras. And that's a little bit egotistical for me to say, I want to see an aura. But, I do. But I am not ready to see an aura. And I have never seen a full-blown aura. When that day comes, I will go, oh boy. And I know it's coming, but in its own time, right? But until then, I wish I could see an aura. But my point is, with these abilities, and you know that too, that you can't be envious of someone else's abilities, because everyone is different. We all have different ways of doing things, and different ways of processing things, and different ways of being. So I want to get the envy out of there or the ego out of the way so that we can just honor one another and our gifts so that we can feed off each other. So we can, I don't know, maybe make the collective a little bit better than it was.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate really everything that you share in general. And I want to just backtrack again. So there's a few things, I feel that with that automatic writing, that it's like we're being these channels for this divine information, this divine message to be broadcast, even if it's just so that we read it, we see it, we sense it, and then it kind of like it brings it from the Akashik, from the grid into this third dimensional being that we are, and it becomes like, to the degree that we're acknowledging it or ready to receive it, it becomes like a synaptic frequency design within us that then invites us to be more present in that frequency with those experiences, right, for them to happen. And because everything is vibration and it's going to match itself, like we're saying, we're never going to be met with anything we're not ready to be an experience with. Now, there may be fear around some stuff. We might think we're not ready. Yet, whatever it is, we have almost, or we do. We co-create those experiences for ourselves, I feel. And to invite ourselves, in conjunction with spirit always, like to the initiation, to absorbing, to realizing, to allowing that, the alchemy of whatever that information is, to be sustained in our being, because I feel that that the more light we bring into ourselves, the more awareness, there's more spirit in us. And that, receiving the love, receiving those downloads, that information is an initiation of sorts. And so going back to like my friends and other people I know who are like, I don't know, I'm not ready for it, I've had a few bouts of it, but I'm freaked out. It's like, okay, yeah, you get it, but it's there. It's there. And whenever they want, they just sit down and with that sincere, reverence, it'll come back. And it's really always there. So a few things, if you could, just for folks who are unaware, if you could give us a brief little overview of who Metatron is. And as well, I wanted to talk about, what did I want to go with you for you just expressing something? Your sense abilities, So, oh yes, the thing about the auras. So I've seen auras since I was a little boo-boo. And now it's like, and I've never had to really try. And there's actually a thing that I'll share with you that's really, really cool. It's a way to work that. And there's a second part to it. But you dim out the lights, and you and your friends or your beloved, you stand against a blank wall in sort of a dim light, and you just slightly move a little left and right, and you begin to see what we call in Europe the ready brick glow, like the etheric, the white light glow body. And then as they will, the colors will start to come. I got this cool download because when I was little, I had like telekinesis. I could move stuff with my mind, small things, but I could move things. And then it just disappeared. And I remember then I got into my 20s and getting into, deeper into spirituality and all that. And I was like, oh, that thing where I could move stuff. And then I'd be like trying to move the flip-flop from across the room down the hallway. And it's like the flip-flop just sitting there like, I ain't going anywhere. And I'm like, ooh, move that flip-flop, or whatever it is, trying to figure it out. But I keep getting the little tap on the shoulder that's like, try it, give it a go. And I'm like, why should I if it's not even a thing? Like whatever. And Spirit says, in this dimension, it's not a necessity. So don't be attached. Yet it is a supernatural, like part, like what you're saying, the musculature of your spirituality. And like how you've seen that little bit of aura, like it's in there, it's there. And so the continuation for me is that tap on the shoulders, the continuation of the practice. And Spirit was like, look, you may not, see the flip-flop moving in the third dimension right now. But if you keep practicing that, when the divine aligns for that perfect time and space, when that will make sense and when it will be of service for the greater good, oh, honey, that flip-flop, whatever it is going to move. And so I just offer all of us that have those little things that we're like, ooh, I want to do it. I feel like I can do it. And I've done it a little bit before, but it's not really working out. What we're doing when we do show up, though, is that we're training those multidimensional muscles on a different level. And even if it's not showing it will later. And so, which I feel is very resonant. And that kind of, then I was like, oh, okay, I'll get back to moving the flip-flop then. I was like, all right then, you know. So please, just backtrack a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Metatron. And then getting into, I was reading on your site that you actually trained, that you did some training, which I have a medium best friend who's going to be on the show next week. She's Irish, and she's also trained, and she said it really helped her to, like, understand the gifts and, like, focus and hone. So if you could tell us a little bit about that, too, along your path.
Sure. So Metatron is, in the Christian Bible, he's Enoch. So actually there were only 2 archangels that came to earth and then ascended, right? Back up? It is ascended. So there was Enoch, and then there was his brother Sandalphon. So they both lived on earth. They both in the Bible. They both have books in the Bible. In the Catholic Bible, they're not there, but I don't know which Bible they're in. But anyway, they were here on earth. Then they ascended back to heaven. Metatron sits at the right hand of God by Jesus. Okay, and he is in charge of the Akashik records. So he writes our life story. He's in charge of the stars. He's in charge of, like they say that I love that saying, your life is written in the stars, but it's written actually in your Akash or your Akashik. I see Jillian's on too. She works a lot with the Akashik. So he's in charge of your life story. Now, yes, you can change your life story a little bit by little deviations, but actually, if you listen to your soul blueprint, it's kind of already there. He's in charge of that. He's in charge of communication directly to God. So it's not surprising that for me, and he's also my guardian angel. If you look up your guardian angel, he's actually my guardian angel for real. So that was kind of really cool too. So anyway, him and Sandalphon, they ascended back into heaven, and now they work with the Akash. They obviously do automatic writing. They do a lot of things that are for you, but you have to ask. All the angels you have to ask for their help, or else, they're kind of like just out there. Not like your guides kind of guide you. But if you go up a couple notches and you got to your archangels, you have to ask them for help. So when you're in the meditative state, whichever archangel decides to talk to you, or whichever spirit guide decides to talk to you, you have to ask them, tell me something. Let me know who you are. Ask questions, because if you don't ask questions, you won't know, right? I didn't know who I was writing for until at the end when he told me, and then now I know who it is, and I know the vibration of it. If it's a different voice, I know, I got to learn somebody new. But that's probably how I got really close to Metatron. Then the sacred geometry part of it was really mind-blowing to me because I'm married to an engineer. And I remember going to my husband saying, look at this, because he thought, for a while, what is Diane doing studying all this stuff? And I showed him the sacred geometry symbol, or the actual thing, the Merkaba. And he said, what are you doing with the Merkaba? I said, see? I told you. And I was so excited that day. He goes, what? And I said, this is Metatron. And I just started rambling all these things, and he's like, whoa, back up. It's geometry, Diane. I said, I know, but it's sacred geometry, and you don't understand.
Right? And doesn't Metatron, like, hold the building blocks in sacred geometry? Like, isn't he said to be, like, the holder of the building blocks of, like, creation? So he's, like, the root anchor point, as it were. Yeah. So with this symbol, you can make every shape in the world. You can, do a bunch of stuff in geometry. I don't know what you do with that, but in sacred geometry, you incorporate it into your life, and you make grids and stuff like that. So that was Metatron. Now, what was the other part that I was supposed to be? The other part was I was interested in hearing about your training with mediumship or with your psychic abilities. And you know what? I just had a memory here. Also, there's something you said a little while ago about the Kundalini, or about the the spiritual awakening, and the aspect of not forcing it. And I feel like that is such a humble thing that we come into, that we eventually learn. If we don't already sort of have a sense of that, when we show up sincerely, you'll really get that, because there is a grid of folks that, like, just I want my third eye to be open now. I want to, I want a Kundalini experience now, and I have seen those things happen. And granted, what we were saying about nothing's ever going to come that you're not ready to be with. Yet there is a psychological component where the old gets broken down when you have a Kundi experience, when you have these awakenings, and so to have the correct conditions around you in order to process it, to digest it, because there is a breaking down for that. But I'm with you in that sense of, just creating the correct conditions for the divine, and it will blossom. You will awaken, in your own perfect divine time, for sure. And it can be under grace, although sometimes, it's just like, and that's just what it is. But yes, please, so go on. So about your training with being an intuitive, with exploring your medium capabilities. Tell us about that.
So what happened was is after I started automatic writing, actually I started reading cards, or not reading them, but learning cards. I thought, well, that made sense to me for the next logical step was let's try to get in touch with the intuitive part. Let's see if I can do that. Now there's 78 cards in a normal deck, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how am I going to learn all these things? Well, you learn each card in tarot, oracle's a little different, but and then I learned the meanings of the positions, I learned the meanings of the cards, and I could do a reading just fine. And I remember starting to read for friends, and then all of a sudden these words would come out of my mouth that I had no idea where they came from, what I even said. And people were crying, they were laughing, they were, having all these emotions, and I'm looking at them going, what did I say? And, I didn't, because you don't remember. And that's kind of the little shift there. I'm like, there's something to letting go and letting spirit just come through you. There's something to that. So that's what I practiced a lot, was letting go of everything in me becoming a hollow bone and just letting spirit come through. And that's how I do my readings now. Then what happened was is I started to read more intuitively. Then I didn't even really need the cards, although they were kind of a safety net for me. Like, I can shuffle the cards, put them out, and then I'm okay to tell spirit, let's go to work. And then I shut it off when you're done with the cards, you put them away, you're done. You're shut off now. Because I'm not going to do this 24 hours a day. So I remember one time I was working at a little shop, and these two women walked in and they wanted mediumship readings. Now, I did not say I was a medium at all. And I always said that I would not be a medium. I'm not going to do this.
Are you serious?
I did. Universe had totally different plans for me, right? So my friend who was going to read this other person's, I told her in the hallway and I said, I can't do this because I don't do that. She said, just say what comes out of your mouth. Just do it. Like, okie dokie, here we go. So, did the reading, I read like 2 cards, and then all of a sudden, here comes a grandmother. And I'll remember this one because it was very distinct. I saw this woman, and she was older, she had like an apron on, and she was holding 2 ears of corn. And she was standing in the corner by my room, or by the person. And she told me she was a grandmother, and I'm like looking, like not at the client, but over to this person. And I said, okay, now there's this woman. She's got this apron on, it's red or whatever, but she's holding 2 ears of corn and she wants to talk to you. Is that okay? And she started crying. She says, yes. And I said, well, who is this? She says, that's my grandmother. And I said, well, what's the 2 ears of corn about? She said, I inherited her corn steamer, and I just replaced it 2 days ago. Oh. I'm like, holy moly, really? And then kind of like, what? Are you kidding me? So that was my first experience with mediumship. Like, whoa, that blew my mind. And then the woman that was sitting in the chair, like, her mind was like, what's wrong? Like, you did not know you could do this or something? I'm like, well, no, not really. Anyway. So that's kind of where the mediumship came in, and then the more I practiced that, the more, spirits started to show up, and messages started being delivered. Sometimes they didn't see, sometimes they did. Now I do, but it just kind of happened that way. But that was the first time that I actually tried, and it worked, and so everything had to be aligned for that to work. I don't know how it worked, but it did. And we got the corn story. So, yeah, that's what happened. So now when I train mediums, or not train them, but mentor them, I like to call people who already have these gifts, people who are already clairvoyant, who can already see, but they don't quite know how to turn things on or off or pause them. What, spirits they should entertain or something. What I do, and I don't know if anybody else does this, but I'll take them to the middle of a restaurant. And that's where I mentor them. In the middle of a restaurant. Because for me, the energies around, I want you to hone in on my energy, but know that there's going to be several people that want to knock on your door, right? At that specific moment, to deliver a message for somebody else. I want you to block all that, but read for me. So that's why I go to a restaurant. I don't go to a closed space or a shut off room and let's talk about this or anything. No. We're going flat out to a restaurant. We're going to experience all the energy we can feel and then hone in on me. Because I got plenty you can talk to. So that's kind of how my mentorship evolved over maybe 2 or 3 of them. And I decided that's the way I'm going to do it from now on, is just let's go to a restaurant. And we'll spend an hour, every week or so and do it that way. And people really appreciate that because they find it funny that other spirits try to knock. We talk about how to entertain, not to entertain, how to turn people off, how to turn people on. That didn't sound right, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
And stuff like that, so that we can hone our gift that way and just focus. Because it does focus, right? I mean, you're not going to entertain everybody that comes knocking. So I try to teach focus that way, and then we go into, what message to deliver, how to deliver the message, what if you don't understand the message, all that kind of stuff. So that's how that came about.
Yeah, and your first experience is just so beautiful. It's primal in a way because it's like you obviously had gifts, and then you had the angel that was saying, "Come on, you could do this." Your buddy, and then what I call it is the mystic gift of trust, where it's like, because it really is when you channel and you intuitive, those capabilities and the messages, the visions that what you get, and you share that, you really, got to get out of the way and only be present. Really, I mean, always in love and light, but in the sense of to pay attention. Like, am I supposed to edit this? How much of this? What is the most important nugget here? What is really important to share? But I think just our willingness to show up and our willingness to trust those gifts are what create that opening for more of it to come through us appropriately. And so did you actually go and receive training as well at a certain point to explore your mediumship or your gifts in that way?
No, what I did for the mediumship part of it is I just kept working at the shop, and it would happen more and more. I did have the friend who was a medium, and I would go to her sometimes and say, this happened or that happened. Because I never remembered the messages, but I remember the feeling of them, and I knew how the people left. And I'm like, was that okay? And she said, always, she's the one that taught me, always trust. Always trust whatever comes out is going to be right for them. You might not be right at that specific moment, but if they walk out that door 2 hours later, they're going to go, that's who she was talking about, or this is what's going on. So never be afraid to be wrong, because you're never wrong. Your timing is off, right? Or your timing is off for that person. So give yourself the permission, and I think I read this in a few books too, give yourself permission to be wrong, because you're not wrong. So wrong is right. And then give yourself permission to be open, but with a hollow bone and a safe bone. Always use protection, always make sure you're in the white light, always be sure that you're talking to the right white light people. We're not entertaining anything else. At least I don't. But the trust in the fact that something will come through is where I land. Like, even in readings, like, you don't know what the reading's going to be about, you don't know what anything's going to be about, but the trust that you know that something will come through, and it does, is where I land and where I am safe and where I'm okay to deliver a message. Because if I didn't trust, in that divine connection, then I couldn't do what I do, and you couldn't do what you do, right? You got to have that trust in you. For one, a little bit of ego has to play, but then you got to let it go and say, I trust in this divine source, that I have this connection that I have, and that everything's going to be okay. And it is. Because you can go into nervous, but just put all that away. It's gonna just be okay. Just trust.
Absolutely. And I feel especially when we're called, when the divine guides you to certain opportunities or experiences to embody, those gifts, that those gifts will be there for you. And it's just like having that courage to step through and say, this hollow bone idea, if this is new to folks, it's really what we learned in Reiki from the beginning. It's where you get out of the way, and it's not you. It's not like I'm healing you, but you get out of the way and you let spirit, life force, love, God force, whatever all the beautiful words are, channel through you and guide the healing, versus you making big decisions. And I know there's different layers, or there's different ways that people practice, but as the general rule, it is that hollow bone where you are just a conduit for love to really do the work through you. And it's the same thing I feel with mediumship, with anything where we're channeling spirit. And I know for me, for years, I have tons of YouTube videos where I talk about protection. And that was a big thing. And like for a long time now, I don't, it sounds weird, but we're saying some interesting things. I don't use protection. It's these funny little things that we're saying here today, but they could be translated in funny ways. But on a spiritual level, I think in my experience, what's happened is I've gone into, and I think it's different for everyone, but to a certain point of just absolute trust, like in so much so beyond what this world would show me. I feel that the connection with the supernatural, with God, for me, is so, that cord is just like, it's so established that it's not like I'm a fool. If my higher self is like, okay, girl, you better put that crystal on, or you better call in a ring of white light, I'm no fool. With honor, it's like, of course. Yet, whereas that was a continual part of the practice for a long, long time for me, now, I almost feel, and this is just with respect to everyone, everywhere, that uses protection in that way. But what I will say is that there is a point that I've experienced where it almost becomes counter, and it becomes counterintuitive, but again, to the point that we have any fear, because I feel that there's fear attached to protection, and at the same time honoring that there is a place for it. And so if we come in without fear and call it in, it's a very different thing than to be like, oh shit, I gotta call in like a million angels and all this stuff, because where I'm going is weird territory. It's like, well, should you be going there? Is that the territory that your true spirit is calling you to? But it's just it's an interesting aspect of the conversation in that, So I feel that love is really something that we get to lean into and trust, and it bridges this supernatural, multidimensional aspect of our being, and creates a sacred space where the divine can channel through, and in that now moment frequency, really create the happenstance of the miracle, or that shifting, realigning of time and space from that space that is beyond what we see here in the world. But I fully honor it, and I get it, and I respect it absolutely, because I know the power that it is, and when it's called and guided, for sure. I instill it absolutely.
And I hear what you're saying, that there was I spent a lot of time protecting, a lot of time, this actually, crystal was inspired by you. I had a friend of mine make it. She makes jewelry. Oh, shut up.
I know, mine's now on a longer cord, because now this little one wants to be up here.
I said, I have to have this quartz, I have to have it this way, you don't understand. And she's like, okay, so she gave it to me for my birthday, and I'm like, oh, it's so cool. Anyway, there is, I always preach protection when I mentor people, protect. But I agree with you. There is a point that you get when I believe you are protected, and you're protected enough that you can expand, because sometimes that bubble may get in the way. When you get to a certain point, it may get in the way of you expanding, and you limit yourself.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. So I am 100% for protection, but know when it's time to expand it.
And which is, and that's terrifying. That could be so scary, because as well, when I've worked with apprentices, and they're going into unknown territory, they're opening up that third eye, the heart chakra, they're like seeing stuff, hearing stuff, doing all sorts of stuff, and so it's like, absolutely, like teach, instill all those protection, gifts and tools and all that stuff, because that helped me. I was like, I was like, everything that I wore, every chant that I did, it was like, we're going in, calling in my protection. So absolutely, but there's different fractals of that for sure. And so what I'm really interested in now, let's get into the Reiki journey. So how did that, like from your medium, your reading, your automatic writing, and all this, all your senses expanding, how did the Reiki come to you?
The Reiki actually found me, as everything else kind of did. It started with the one girl that she was actually studying Reiki. She went for her master's attunement, I think it was, and I went with her and drove, and that's when I had the spontaneous Kundalini going on. And thank goodness she didn't know anything about it, but her master did. And they came out of the room, and they're looking at me, and I'm staring at a brick wall, freaking out. And one woman, she says, your Kundalini just opened, and I looked at her like, huh? And then my pinky started to tingle. I remember that, and they said, I think you have Reiki now. And I'm like, well, I don't know what I got, but there's something going on here. So then I started to look into Reiki a little bit more, and then my hands, I started with Chi a lot. There's a lot of Chi going on, a lot of Chi ball making. Literally I had to pull over in parking lots because my hands had to do something with this energy. I didn't know what to do with it, so I would make a Chi ball and just throw it up to the sun or the moon, whatever. And, love and light to you, just be gone because I got to drive, right? Then I started studying. I told, we had this summit that we did last weekend. Probably most of those people are on here. There was Jillian, Dr. Renee, Sharon, and myself. We did this summit, and we all talked about this, similar things. But for me, I started to study under one master would leave me, the other master would leave me, the other master would leave me, but they left me with something, but not enough. So eventually I got to the point where I had to do this all on my own. The last one I found on my own, and I did the journey by myself with another friend. And then we, we learned about healing crises and all these things that Reiki brings up in you, and all these emotions that you delete, and all these emotions that come into you. So this last teacher that we had exposed me to Holy Fire, and that's when the real cleansing began. Literally cleansing and all this stuff. But that's where it kind of really, really started, and I noticed my clients, I had clients at the time, they could feel the difference in the Reiki, and I was more in tune with them than I had ever been in my life. More in tune psychically, because I would start to deliver messages from people who had passed during the Reiki session, which was weird to me. I'd never done that before. And all of a sudden, here's George in the corner, and he's standing there talking to me, or whatever his name is, And so then you got that going on, plus you're trying to do all these things. I just let go, and I trusted again. I trusted in, I'm the hollow bone. I'm not in charge of this. I trust that everything that happens in this session is part of this session. It's not supposed to be deleted, or, I'm not supposed to call in on anything. Just do what you're supposed to do. Let it happen. Just like the readings, let them happen. And they're the most beautiful sessions now because they're just guided. I don't do anything. I'm just a hollow bone again. But I trust that when we do this and we do whatever we're supposed to do, it's going to happen. It's part of the session. If George shows up, he shows up. If he doesn't show up, oh well. You know, that's just kind of where I'm at right now is the hollow bone again. Back to the hollow bone.
Isn't it interesting too? Because when you have those experiences and you're facilitating, and the deceased husband or someone comes in and you start giving those messages, and then that client comes back a while later. You know, I know for me when that started happening, and I was like, "Oh, are they going to come back? And if they don't, is the client going to be disappointed? And is that what they're coming here for? And should I be just trying to channel the guy for them? Or and then you're just like, okay, let it all go. Doesn't matter. If it does, it does. It's not up to me by any means. And I think that's the juice of the grace of the hollow bone aspect. Is like just it's perfect, whatever it is, you know. And even there's been clients that have come for an hour, Reiki session, and we end up talking for 45 minutes of the session. And they get on the table for 15 minutes, and that's all they need. They actually needed to be seen, to be heard, and that 15 minutes, like, boom, that was enough to just do what needed to be done. And so I totally agree without trying to, like, force things or make things be a certain way. But really, isn't it just that beautiful thing of holding space for others?
Yep.
You know?
And when happens, it's meant to be. If you're meant to sit there and talk for 45 minutes, that's perfectly fine. I'm whatever you need. I'm just here. I'm the facilitator, just whatever you need, I'm here for you. And that's it. And that's the way I look at it now is it took me a while to get there, yeah. And, my first client who rolled up in a ball and started to cry, did that freak me out? Yeah. All these things that you learn along the way, they freak you out a little bit? Yeah. But you get to a point where you realize this isn't you. It's just your hollow bone and you're channeling. If Jay is still on here, he can tell you too. You're just channeling the divine, and that's it. That's enough.
Yep.
All we can
do. I remember, it was probably about 19 years ago, and I had attuned a friend to her level 1, and she was it was in the beginning. And I've had the honor of sharing a numerous amount of attunement, but this was maybe like my 13th or something. And it was bizarre because you did the attunement, and then usually there's that period afterwards where they soak it in, and you let them just like be the frequencies, and then you check in, and if they're ready to come out, you give them water, and then you kind of go to the next phase or whatever, different. We all maybe teach it slightly different ways. But and I remember this friend of mine, I got the guidance to check in, so I checked in, and she was gone. And she kept being gone, and it was like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, and then I was like, okay, Spirit, what am I supposed to do? And they're like, sit in the corner and start homing, and I was like, okay, and just really holding space for her, and then she finally, in her own time, sort of came back, and. What I realized at the end of it is that she had been a heroin addict, had attempted suicide several times. And there were things that I knew about this friend, but like these deeper aspects were being purged by her level 1, and it took her way down her rabbit hole for all that alchemy of that healing to slowly get through all those layers, as I call it, of horror, of that like pain and the trauma of her past, so that she could kind of like realign with her here and now and come into focus, almost like a kaleidoscope, like all these parts of her fractals were kind of like hit with that choku ray, and then she was like, okay, I'm back. But I remember that was the first time anything, like the other ones were very sort of clinical and like A plus B equals C, and everyone was like happy, and we did our little thing, and that was the first time I was like, oh, this like thing has its own, like it's really its own thing depending on the person, and so let me really honor this. And so yeah, I mean, as teachers and facilitators, we're constantly students, right? We're constantly learning, and being invited to learn greater levels of humility and hold space in beautiful ways. And so when you got and you know what, I don't, my little phone that I usually use to keep time in. For some reason, it's not working, so I have no idea. We have 5 minutes? Okay, thank you. So, for anyone that is interested, what we'll say just before, because I know we get a countdown here towards the end, so I just want to let you know to go to Diane's Instagram. It is intuitivespirit.life, and check her out. She has all sorts of information there about what she does. You can get a tarot reading. You can get a channeling with you, right, where you will intuit messages, whether it's with or without the tarot. You can just Reiki. You have courses on Reiki and all sorts of juicy stuff. So please do check her out, follow her, and and see if you're guided, receive in process with her divine gifts that she shares. And so, well, we have these last couple of minutes. Yeah, absolutely. I so appreciate your presence. While we still have a few minutes, what is the takeaway that you like? What is it, or what was it for your Reiki specifically that really helped you? Because ultimately, isn't it like we learn how to heal ourselves, and then in that way, it's like our initiation to be able to hold that space and really genuinely, be there for others as they transform. So, what areas of your life did it help you transform? Because I know you also do Reiki, which is huge.
Yeah. For me, it helped me to put my experiences from the past into perspective, put my experiences from now into perspective, and envision my future self. Now I'm working on future self stuff. But really, I posted the other day about my mom rubbing my feet, and she's passed, and she was very abusive, and she's been gone a long time, but I always held this space for her that was not good, right? And I remembered this memory that just came to me maybe a couple weeks ago, and she used to rub my feet. Now, for anybody else, it would sound like crazy, like, so your mom rubbed your feet. But you know what? In that moment, I felt love. I felt love for the first time in my life.
From the mother.
Because I had always been my own mother. But I felt love from my actual mother. That doesn't forgive everything that she's done to me or whatever. That's whatever. That is what it is. But I think I'm getting ready to teach Reiki 1 and 2 class this weekend. And it came to me just now, this love, like a second, like, oh my God, that's how she showed love to me. And I felt it, and I started to cry. Because I had never felt that love, ever. And I did for that instant. I felt it. Now it's, kind of like whatever. But I did that. I'm like, and my husband's sitting next to me, and I'm bawling my eyes out. He said, "What is wrong with you?" I said, "My mom rubbed my feet." And he's like, "Okay, yeah." And then I explained to him, I tried to explain because I was like crying and trying to explain what this is. But I believe that was another thing that Reiki, because I've been studying, you study again to teach the class, and an online class is different. And I think Reiki kind of brought that up for me again, that, hey, you're not done with Reiki. Reiki's not done with you. And I don't think Reiki will ever be done with me, to tell you the truth. It's still going to keep going and going. But that's kind of where it's at now, is I am propelling forward spiritually now, more than, my body. Now it's spirit that is kind of incorporating, coming back into my life, saying, you know what, all these chakras you got, especially your root, your sacral, we're going to clear all that up for you now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We always tend to work on the upper parts, and we forget about the lower ones. I think that's where
it's so necessary, though. You got to have that anchor, that grounding for all this takeoff, this lift off.
But let's work on here a little bit. So
yeah. And it's so beautiful, because even just a day or two ago, my mother DM'd me this beautiful post that said something like, wouldn't it be beautiful if part of our training in school, or part of, every child's curriculum, was an aspect of healing the mother relationship. It is so powerful. So it looks like we're going to end here. In the last couple, 30 seconds, 20 seconds we have, what's your guidance that you would share for the times that we're in now? What would you tell us?
Times that we're in now, you know what? Let's just calm down. Let's stop thinking so much. Let's for one day, try to live intuitively.
Try to just go out of yourself and live intuitively. See where that goes.